Wondering how your mindset affects your life? How to bring more energy into your business and life? Millions of people around the world ask these same questions daily. You are in the right place. Learn practices that will help give your life the meaning and success you've been searching for. Welcome to the Charge Podcast, teaching you how to create habits around real goals every day. Practical life advice from those who made it. Here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Hey Chargers, we created a learning library on our website just for you. Go to chargepodcast.com and click on the link Learning Center. We have articles like 7 steps to build your morning routine, 8 tips to manage stress. We also created some free downloads for you like 8 steps to replace work fatigue and productivity and recovery. Or how about 20 productivity hacks? These resources are made just for you. Remember, go to chargepodcast.com and click on the Learning Center. Welcome, Chargers. We're glad to have you back again today for another great podcast. Remember, our goal this quarter is to find guests that will help you really get out the gate in 2023, thinking differently about your business or maybe doing something different for your business. And today, I think we found that guest for you again that's going to make you think about what changes do you need to make in your small business to make it more successful. And I have with us Kurt today, but before I introduce him, I want him to share with us what problem will you solve for our Charge Podcast listeners, Kurt?
Yes, thanks for having me. The problem we like to solve is how do you take your business to the next level when you've kind of reached a point where you believe you've tapped your initial client base? And how do you resource your company in order to take advantages of larger opportunities, possibly unforeseen opportunities that may hit because of economic issues, and that will drive your business forward to multiples of levels above where you are now.
So I love what we're going to talk about to Kurt today, because so many small business owners, they want to take their business to that next level, but they're not sure how to do it. And Kurt Davis is a technology executive and an investor with over 2 decades of experience building tech startups throughout Silicon Valley, Europe, and even Asia. From 2008 to 2017, he worked with a startup called Boku, where he led a global business development, focusing on deals with Apple, Microsoft, Spotify, Sony, and more. His book documents and chronicles Boku's journey from closing small sales deals to transactions worth billions of dollars in transactions. Speaking to other entrepreneurs, he realized that many get stuck in their initial market, but a few leap to the chasm to bigger opportunities. So he wrote the book, Navigate to the Lighthouse. It is great to have you on the Charge Podcast, Kurt. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to talk to you. And this is exactly the type of audience I like to address, and I'm hoping I can help.
Well, we're going to get to talk to those small business owners because that's kind of the target of my market that I speak to and understand some of those challenges that small businesses have. So let's kind of start off with this question. How does one really analyze, you talked about deals to be able to take it to that next level, but how can business owners really analyze those deal opportunities that maybe that's in front of them?
Right. I think this is what we talk about in part 1, and we call this the lighthouse framework. So when you're making your bets, sometimes you have to step back and look at, well, where could I invest my resources? Oftentimes you're thinking about, well, this company could really use this, and they don't even know about me. Or there's actually a company that might have approached you that just seems, oh my God, we could never service them, because if we did, it would take our entire company. And so what you want to do is you want to create really a pipeline of anything that's the craziest deal to the most plausible deal that you don't have. And when you do that, then you can create, several columns. And I list what those could be, but they could possibly be variables, I call them, that could close the variables of success that could help you close the deal. So these things could be, does this company like new technology? Are they a fast moving company? Are they a slow moving company that just doesn't like to do many different things? Do they have a lot of competition? So your technology could be an advantage for them against another company. So you actually have to dissect the companies you're looking at and the market they're playing in and learn about them. And then you try to assign an expected value. Well, if this company worked with me, it could be really big. If this company worked with me, it could be so big, but it's a high probability they would do the deal. And so you kind of do that spreadsheet, you kind of do that analysis, and then you lay out and say, okay, these are the bets I could make. Here's the expected return, the expected amount of time that it would take. And then you have a new, let's call it, playing field of saying, okay, I've got a good idea what's going to take a long time, what's going to take a short amount of time. And you can't do it from just sitting in your seat completely. You have to get out there and talk to people. You have to have your sales reps start talking to them, getting information, read the news, read articles, read about these companies so you learn about them. You're investing in the company almost by doing this spreadsheet, and that's a lot of information. And in one of the chapters after the Lighthouse framework, I talk about be a spy, and you have to get out there and kind of find that information through discussions and talking and reading and all that great stuff.
So you get a really good understanding of, number one, the type of business that you want to go after, but you really know with kind of the spy and that information, I'm sure you're kind of really finding out what their true pain points are and the challenges they're having.
Exactly. So you're getting to know them a little bit at this stage. And again, that could be through a sales contact, that could be through a person on your board who's connected with that company. And you're trying to understand how that company works and what's their, what issues are they coming across to perhaps there might be a blinking light there that says, hey, they could use what we're doing. So you really got to spend time gathering information and doing that in different ways. And then when you approach them, you take it to the next point is that consulting type of work. You've got all this information now. Well, we've learned about you. We understand. Can you tell us more about how we can help you solve your problems?
Yeah. I love that because, a lot of times we think, oh, just put a lot of information out there and we hope, we pray, we wish that something just comes of it versus having a very strategic approach is what you're talking about.
Yeah. And that's often the mistake a lot of people make. You get so used to, especially smaller entrepreneurs, and I've been there. I've done lots of different businesses from landscaping and whatever else. And I always used to think about my landscaping days. Like if I go to you and say, I sell the lawn, I can cut your lawn. And you're like, great, but I got somebody who cuts my lawn, or I have somebody else who can cut my lawn. Then you close the door on the discussion, right? But if you walk in there and say, I do services, I make your lawn look beautiful. And they say, oh, great. Well, I have somebody who cuts my lawn, but I don't have somebody who does the shrubbery, who does the flowering. In fact, you may not do some of this stuff, but you start to learn, hey, maybe if I do some of these other things, I can get that business. And so that's the kind of approach you have to widen your solution setup in order to grow as a company. So many companies, as you said, shoot with that information. They shoot their information out there. They're shooting, this is what we do. This is our thing. And that is the absolute wrong way to do it.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I know so many businesses, that's what they're doing. They're just trying to, what they always say, the shotgun approach, throw a bunch of spaghetti up on the wall. Let's see what sticks.
Right.
Kurt, well, along with this, one of the questions I think plays into that, and it kind of some of what we were just talking about, how teamwork really plays into business development as we're looking at that bigger picture and as we're looking to scale in those different areas. So how do you believe that teamwork is so important in really creating that business development as we're going forward?
Yeah, I think it's business sometimes is very individual, right? It's not individual contributors, especially the sales people would get to a point like, I did this deal, I did that deal, or this is my idea, or that is my idea. And while ownership is very good in business, you want to empower your team of people. Sometimes you have to carve out a piece of everyone's job description and say, there's a team element here. In order for this company to grow, you have to share this information. We need you to go do some of these meetings. We need to go do these things. That doesn't necessarily mean that's going to, track against your bonus, because in order for us to collect that information and have those discussions to come back as a team to formulate what we need to do, that's what we have to do. And so there is a teamwork element that often gets overlooked that has to be applied in order to make business development work. And it's gathering information, and sharing information and sharing ideas and ensuring that the team wins. And that's very crucial. Also, not just figuring out what you want to do, but when you go out and sell, you actually have to do these big deals together. Like I said, you get your board to talk to investors or CEOs of other companies. You as a maybe an entrepreneur CEO, you've got to get in there too and hustle up and find some deals and find some contacts. And then maybe your sales team has contacts, and even maybe the operators or the engineers, they have friends who work at these other companies. And many, many times those guys who doing the hard work, the operations, the building, they get along better than the CEOs. And so you send them out to do a little bit of work too. And so I call that team sales. And that is a very powerful way to go get those big deals.
Yeah. And it's networking and understanding that, there's multiple people that can connect the dots to get you to the right people.
Precisely.
Well, that's wonderful. How about, one of the things is, as small business owners, they all want to chase a big deal and they want to go after it. But sometimes the challenge is, how do they get that to really move forward or to really get that opportunity? You talked about some of the ways there, but how can you get big deals to be able to be on that radar screen to be able to get that, if you're a smaller operator?
I think what I hear you trying to get to is, how do you resource that and invest against it in the hope that it will happen within a certain amount of time? And some of these deals take 12 months, some of them take 36 months. And sometimes they happen because of an economic crisis. And you didn't predict that, but you were in front of them before the economic crisis. And so when something happened, you were the receiver, the beneficiary of, hey, we need to fix this really fast. But we've been talking to this Kurt guy for like 12 months and he just happens to be here. So you're saying, whoa, how do you do that? Like, how do you play the unknown? And that's how what you do is so as you've done your spreadsheet, you say, these are people, these are companies who could possibly use our technology. So you're already there. You know that they could benefit from it. You do more than they do possibly. So what you do is you first start to build the relationships from a very high level. They get to know you. They know who you are. They know what you do. And there's ways then to keep that warm through email updates. Here's what's happening with our company. Invite them to a little cocktails. Just keep in front of them, just letting them know. So you're not always hard selling them, but they know you're out there. And then what happens is, as you have a list of these 20 or 30, you start to narrow in a little bit harder when you start to feel like, hey, this company is having a problem. Well, you push a little bit harder when you see something. Hey, we noticed you're having this problem. We can solve that for you. Let's get together. I'm in the neighborhood. I want to come see you, right? And so it's your job to pick and choose the pushing times. And then once you start to push a little bit more, they'll start to respond. And when they start to respond, you've hooked them, right? And so the other deals that you haven't hooked, you're still keeping warm. You're checking in with every 3 months. They know who you are. And so if something changes in the marketplace or the dynamics, you're the one they call. And so that's kind of how you approach it from a kind of a high level. So you lay the seeds, you build the relationships, you're keeping everything warm. And as something changes, 1 or 2 deals will change and 1 or 2 relationships will change. And then you push hard on those to see if you can close them.
Yeah. Some of that reminds me of what I had a business sales coach one time tell me is, their number one success in sales is with follow-up, and that we're staying in touch with them, because then when things change, you're top of mind versus them going out to research, where do they have to get it? But if every 3 months you're touching base with the ones that are not in your top of the flow right now, they're going to come into it. So I think that's a great advice there. I appreciate you sharing that. Now, you wrote the book, Navigate to the Lighthouse. You mentioned it a little bit about some of your framework that's in there. But tell me, as a reader, if I picked up that book and I read through that book, what is really the concept that you really want people to walk away with from the book?
Yeah, I think the key takeaway is you can resource the deal, the impossible deals, if you're smart about risk-adjusted return, managing your risk against them, and knowing that they'll take time and take effort, and that you can throttle them based on interest, right? So it's how you manage the risk and how you invest against it. So you might start off investing 5% of your resources against deals like this, and then you slowly increase that to 10 as you see them move 15, 20%. And then when the deals hit, all of a sudden 30% of your business are these bigger deals. And so it's how you resource it, how you calculate the expected return, and then just kind of, how, one of the key areas in the last section, which the last 4 or 5 chapters, is how do you get the lighthouse to dance? What do you say to them? How do you get them to move? How do you, create competitive forces against them?
Great. Well, I know I wanted to share that because I know you are making an offer that you're willing to give our charged listeners, I think, a free audiobook for the first 10 people that will email you. Will you give them what your email is? And we will also have that in show notes for them.
Certainly. So here's the email. It's katie@katiealive.com. And so feel free. I would love to. I have to get the extra additional audiobooks from Amazon and if for some reason that doesn't happen, I will send them an autographed copy of the book. Okay. So as a different, yeah.
And we'll have that in show notes, but it's just katie@katiealive.com. So go to chargepodcast.com. If you don't have that, if you're a normal listener, that's our link, and we'll have great show notes up there for everyone that they can grab a copy of the book. Well, Kurt, it's been great visiting about this topic because every business wants to scale and every business wants to have that opportunity to get that big deal. But there's a process to go through. And that's what you're sharing with them, that if you're willing to work through the process, you can get some of those big deals like you've done for yourself in your career. And I appreciate you sharing that information. Before I let you go, though, I want to ask you a couple questions. I call them my recharge round. 2 questions. And the first one is charge. It's the mantra of the podcast, but it's a mantra of mine: create habits around real goals every day. What habit do you think's led to success in your life?
Ooh, that's a great question. Habits is something I've studied over the pandemic because, as you know, during that time, it was really hard to create a habit. I think just consistency with waking up every day with the notion of pushing along a relationship, a business relationship that doesn't necessarily or has accrued any benefits as of now. So it's, hey, I know these people, they are out there, but for whatever reason, I've always stayed consistent on letting those people know I'm still around. And that's probably why those deals have happened, is just because I'm very consistent with just following up with people, checking in on them, even if they're not, even if there's no deal to do, just how's life. So I'm pretty good with doing that. And I think that habit has reaped some benefits. Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that. My last question for you: we've all had failures and would love to have a do-over. Of course, we don't get a do-over in those, but if you had something that was a failure that you could do over, what would it be for you?
I probably would have taken less risk earlier in life. I took some big swings when I was really young, and I would have been more patient. And I know a lot of people say the other thing, take the risks while you're young. And few people can do that. I think maybe if you're exceptionally brilliant or you're onto something really interesting, maybe do that. But I think patience and there's a lot to be said for learning things, balancing your well-being and your life, not prioritize, getting so worried and wrapped up in your career. I think most people at a young age do that. And I would say that, hey, be patient, be confident with the things you want to learn, and kind of let them unfold as they do. It doesn't mean don't take a risk or don't create it, but take the risk at the right time. And I'm telling you, in your business, don't bet all your marbles on a big deal. Bet a little bit of marbles, and as it warms up, throw another marble in the pot. And I would say do that with your career too, because your career is a long journey, And there's a lot of different things to do. And there's the world, which changes now faster than it's ever changed. And there's a lot to do. You can look back and say, I shouldn't have done that. But I look back today and I'm sitting in my office today saying, wow, like I never thought this opportunity would have come forward. Like, holy cow, that's really cool. Like I'm on this cool Charge podcast. Like I wouldn't have guessed 5 years ago I would be on a podcast. Like, no way.
Well,
So,
I think that's great advice, because sometimes we can go full boat at something, but then we leave other things behind. Part of the reason one of my company's name is Ascend Business Strategies, and Ascend is, and you see the mountains on the background because we're on Zoom talking through this podcast right now. But the reason is those mountains remind me, number one, I like to ski, but what it really reminds me is you don't want to get to the top of the mountain and you're there by yourself.
yeah.
It's lonely then. You want to bring people with you. And when you do that, then it changes everything in business and life. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I think it's a great philosophy to have. Kurt, it's been a great to have you on the podcast and you sharing with my chargers and my listeners, and I truly appreciate it. I want to thank you first for being on the podcast, and share with them again, website or any information if they want to check you out. I know I checked your website out, some great information that you have available.
Sure. If you're, that some of that philosophy in life is on my blog, which is kdalive.com. I talk about traveling, I talk about well-being, and of course, entrepreneurship, kind of all free content. I don't do a podcast or anything. I actually am running a business right now again. If you want to check out the book, Navigate to the Lighthouse is the name on Amazon. I've written another book about African entrepreneurs. I traveled Africa. So that's called Finding Soul. Which is a really fun, if you want some inspiration and you want a kick, if you think your business isn't going well and you feel really down, go read about these African entrepreneurs, and it will really change your perspective quite fast. Anyway, so yeah, but I'd love to hear from anybody who has feedback and can make, what I'm doing better. I'd love to hear from you as well.
Great. Well, thank you for being on the podcast. Chargers, I give you this, I've been given an action every time. What can we do with the information we have? I think Kurt really hit it, is start with that first pebble or that first part of going after those clients. But look how you're doing it. And I would tell you, pick up his book, because he's going to give you that framework. And we talked about it some, but he's going to give it to you in that action. If you want to go after that big deal, don't put everything in. Put a little part in, and then start working through that, and then find those clients that's going to fit you to be able to make that happen, because it could change your business radically. And he's seen it happen in other businesses, and he's made it happen in other businesses as well as his own. I thank you for joining us today for the Charge podcast. Come back next week and we'll have another great guest for you. Make it a great day. We'll see you next week.
This podcast is ended, but your life doesn't just stop. To continue your inspiring journey, head over to chargepodcast.com and access all the tools and resources mentioned on today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, consider sharing with somebody who may also benefit from the advice provided. That's chargepodcast.com. Until next time, charge in business and life.